This man was told by his headmaster that he'd end up locked up in prison or become a millionaire. He chose the latter, and despite having dyslexia and ADHD, he became one of Britain's wealthiest men and gave us one of the world's most irresistible brands, the Virgin Group. This is the story of Richard Branson. Our story starts at Blackheath, southeast London, where young Richard Charles Nicholas Branson was born on the 18th of July 1950 to a barrister, Edward James Branson, and an air hostess, Yvette Huntley Branson. Branson grew up alongside two younger sisters. Growing up, Richard Branson moved between different schools from Surrey to Sussex and Buckinghamshire, and this is no thanks to his poor performance academically. His parents did not link this below-par performance to dyslexia, which was only officially recognized as a learning disability disorder in 1975. He was also diagnosed with dyslexia in his 20s and had ADHD, which further increased his learning difficulty. But Branson's parents were always supportive of their son despite his challenges academically, and it was no surprise that when he expressed his desire to become an entrepreneur at a young age, they were fully behind him.
I was dyslexic when I was at school. I just thought I was maybe stupid. I'd look at an IQ test and have a complete blank. I just couldn't fill in anything. The same way that if I look at a Times crossword, I'll have the same problem today. I'd look at the blackboard and, go blank, and slowly, I was put to the very back of the class and sort of forgotten about. So basically I was absolutely hopeless when it came to conventional education.
Richard Branson's first business venture, at the age of just 16, was a magazine called Student. This came after a series of other endeavors, including unsuccessful attempts to sell Christmas trees and a species of parrots. But in 1966, he co-founded Student together with Nick Powell. The magazine's first issue hit the stands in January 1968, and within just a year, Branson's net worth had risen to an estimated £50,000. The magazine initially struggled to get attention, but it later played an important role in Branson's expanding business empire. He used the magazine as a platform to promote popular albums and conduct interviews with notable figures of the late 1960s, including luminaries like Mick Jagger and R.D. Laing, effectively driving up his record sales.
You dropped out of school at more or less 15 or so. You start the magazine, and as part of the magazine, you get interviews with some prominent people, one of whom was Mick Jagger. Or is it hard to get an interview with Mick Jagger when you're 15 years old?
I think in some ways, if you're 15, you have a better chance of getting interviews with people than if you're 30 or 40 or 50. I would just turn up at people's houses and doorstop them. And because I was young and enthusiastic, they generally took pity on me.
In 1970, Branson set up a mail-order record business and opened a chain of record stores on Oxford Street in London. But as his entrepreneurial spirit continued to grow, in 1971, he faced legal scrutiny concerning the sale of records declared as export stock. He was even briefly jailed and convicted of it. To resolve the matter, Branson agreed to repay any unpaid purchase tax amounting to 33% and a €70,000 fine. His parents even remortgaged their family home to help cover this substantial settlement.
I spent one night in prison. In those days, you had to pay tax on records if you shipped them to Europe. Sadly, with Brexit, people are going to have to do that again. And I stumbled into the fact that if you drove across the channel and drove back again, you had a piece of paper which said you'd exported the records, and therefore you didn't have to pay the tax. Anyway, so we got a bad rap on the knuckles. I spent a night in prison and swore never ever to spend a second night in prison in my life. And yes, we expanded fast in order to pay off the fine. We just needed the turnover, and it was actually a really a wonderful booster to all the team at Virgin and fortunately, we managed within 3 years to pay it off.
Richard Branson was criticized many times for his business strategy, but it's what keeps him moving forward. In 1972, now earning well from his record store, Branson teamed up with Nick Powell to launch Virgin Records. The name Virgin actually came about from a suggestion by one of Branson's early employees, calling them a novice in the business world. With a big ambition in mind, Branson invested in a country estate near Oxford, transforming it into the Manor Studio, a residential recording studio. Virgin Records was pretty much a success for Branson as they had numerous record-breaking albums, and over time, they signed iconic artists including the Rolling Stones, and they eventually became the world's largest independent record label. By 1979, Branson's net worth stood at an astonishing £5 million, and just a year later, Virgin Records began its international expansion. Richard Branson and Virgin soon entered the airline industry, and it actually started quite unexpectedly when Branson's flight was cancelled one time.
Do you have any second-hand 747s for sale?
In the late 90s, Branson boldly entered the railway sector during British Rail's privatization, securing the intercity cross-country and intercity West Coast franchises for Virgin Rail Group. Branson didn't just stop with the music and transport industry. In 1999, he launched the wireless communications brand Virgin Mobile. Following successes in the transport, vacation, and tourism sector on Earth, Richard Branson decided to take his company outside the planet, to space. In 2004, Branson announced the birth of Virgin Galactic, a space tourism venture that aimed to transport paying passengers to suborbital outer space using the technology behind Spaceship One.
Have you ever thought about going into space, Richard?
I'd love to go into space. I think there could be nothing nicer. So if you're building a spacecraft, I'd love to come with you on it.
I always want to celebrate the team on this. You need heart. You need the best minds. You need the best humans to work on programs like this.
The sky is no longer the limit for us.
I really hope that there will be millions of kids all over the world who will be captivated and inspired about the possibility of them going to space one day.
In 2006, Branson's wealth landed him the 9th spot on the Sunday Times Rich list with an estimated net worth of slightly over £3 billion. Virgin expanded further by forming Virgin Australia, Virgin Brussels Airlines, and Virgin Nigeria. Virgin America also commenced operations in San Francisco back in August 2007. He also ventured into hotels, Formula One, healthcare, and so much more. There have also been some number of failed business ventures, such as Virgin Cola, Virgin Cars, Virgin Publishing, Virgin Clothing, and Virgin Brides. The global pandemic posed a significant challenge to Virgin's businesses, especially the airline industry, with international air travel plummeting by a massive 60%. Branson faced serious criticism for asking staff to take 8 weeks unpaid leave, and in a desperate bid to save Virgin Atlantic from bankruptcy, he offered his luxury Necker Island as collateral for a commercial loan. Virgin Atlantic in fact had to lay off a massive 3,000 staff, reduce its fleet size, and retire the Boeing 7-400s due to the pandemic's impact. But looking beyond the pandemic, Richard Branson has certainly had great philanthropic works attached to him. In 1999, he took an active role in the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, an organization set up to find missing children and combat child exploitation. In 2009, he established the Carbon War Room to address global warming and energy issues. He also initiated Virgin Startup, a partner in the UK Startup Loans program, offering loans to entrepreneurs aged 18 to 30. The pilot program injected £600,000 into 100 businesses. In South Africa, he founded the Branson School of Entrepreneurship back in 2005. The school aimed to boost economic growth by supporting startups and micro-enterprises through skills, mentors, services, networks, and financing. He has also seen a fair share of notable honors, and for someone who experienced a hard time at school, it shows that Branson isn't just an ordinary man. He has been given honors from the likes of Queen Elizabeth II, Margaret Thatcher, Prince Charles, Bill Clinton, and numerous prestigious universities and organizations. He appeared at number 85 on the list of 100 Greatest Britons on the BBC and voted for by the public back in 2002. Branson was also ranked in 2007 Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. On the 7th of December 2007, United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon presented Branson with the United Nations Correspondents Association Citizen of the World Award for his support for environmental and humanitarian causes. He also achieved his own personal honor as on the 11th of July 2021, he reached the edge of space aboard Virgin Galactic's VSS Unity, and as such, he is the first billionaire founder of a space company to venture into space.
3, 2, 1, release, release, release. Clean release. Ignition. Good rocket motor burn. There's Mach 1, trimming now.
5, 3, 2, 1, release, release, release.
Fire, fire. Welcome to space.
To all you kids down there, I was once a child with a dream.
looking up to the stars. Now I'm an adult in a spaceship with lots of other wonderful adults looking down to our beautiful, beautiful Earth. To the next generation of dreamers, if we can do this, just imagine what you can do.
So the mission statement that I wrote inside my spacesuit was to turn the dream of space travel into a reality for my grandchildren who are here, for your grandchildren, and for many people who are alive today, for everybody. And having flown to space, I can see even more clearly how Virgin Galactic is the space line for Earth. We're here to make space more accessible to all, and we want to turn the next generation of dreamers into the astronauts of today and tomorrow.
In March 2004, Branson set a new record for the fastest crossing of the English Channel in an amphibious vehicle, the Gibbs Aqua, completing the journey from Dover to Calais in 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 6 seconds, breaking the previous 6-hour record set by 2 Frenchmen. Safe to say, Branson has had quite the adventure. Branson has frequently discussed the influence of non-fiction literature on his life and worldview in several interviews. One of the most notable books he often cites is Nelson Mandela's autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. Branson holds Mandela in the highest regard, describing him as one of the most inspiring men he has ever met and had the honor to call his friend.
It's sort of a sad day for the whole world, but it's also a day to celebrate, and the life of an absolutely incredible man. Perhaps the most incredible person to have lived in our lifetime, and obviously it was a great privilege to spend time and got to know him over the years.
Branson's reading preferences shows his passion for humanitarian and ecological issues. Among his favorite reads includes Al Gore's best-selling book, An Inconvenient Truth, and The Revenge of Gaia by James Lovelock. In his own book, Screw It, Let's Do It, Lessons in Life, Branson reveals additional literary favorites. Notably, he is a fan of Yung Chang's Wild Swans and Antony Beevor's Stalingrad. This shows his interest in other subjects beyond business and entrepreneurship. On the fictional front, Branson has a deep admiration for the character Peter Pan, as he always draws similar characteristics to himself. Rounding up now with a little personal information about Richard Brandson, who has been in and out of a couple of marriages. He first married Kristen Thomasy back in 1972, but unfortunately, their union ended when divorced 7 years later, and they did not have any children together. In 1976, when still with his first wife, Branson crossed paths with another woman, Joan Templeman, and their connection blossomed into a lasting relationship, during which they welcomed 3 children into their lives. Tragically, their firstborn daughter, Claire Sarah, who was born in 1979, passed away only 4 days after her birth. Despite this heartbreaking loss, their family expanded with the arrival of another daughter, Holly, in 1981, followed by the birth of their son, Sam, in 1985. Branson is an atheist, and he said in a 2011 interview with CNN's Piers Morgan that he believes in evolution and the importance of humanitarian efforts, but not in the existence of God.
It's a good question. I mean, I was arguing with a friend about the existence of God or not over dinner in the Great House just before this fire took place, and the next morning I was thinking, now is God, was God really nice to us by allowing us all to survive, or was he punishing me for questioning his existence? So I am grateful, and I'm now spending most of my life trying to say thank you by working quite hard on important causes to try to make a difference. I believe in evolution, and I think evolution is magnificent. I mean, absolutely wonderful, and I think this world that we live on is magnificent, and the creatures on it are magnificent, and we've got to fight to save the tigers, and save the lemurs, and save the imperiled species, and look after the people that are on this earth. I see myself as a humanitarian, who loves people. Maybe one day somebody will be able to convince me that there is a God and there is a particular God. But to me, I love people, and that's to me the most important thing.
All in all, Richard Branson has had what you'd call quite an eventful life, recalling his headmaster who told him that he'd probably end up in prison or become a millionaire. Technically, he did both, but it's safe to say that his legacy with Virgin, a group which today controls more than 400 companies in various fields, is certainly one of the biggest in the world.